One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, why do we need technology? Why do we need to move from where we are at the moment, which is working perfectly well? We sign an insertion order, we send that back, we get allocated a certain number of impressions, and then they run or they don't run. And that's how the campaigns are done. Why do we need to change? And we get asked this quite a lot. It's endemic of the changes that are happening within the industry at the moment. Not just within video, but what we've seen in the last 18 months with display, where display has gone through a major change, where the ability for companies like Rubicon and AdMeld to work with publishers, do the optimization, turn inventory that had been commoditized, and still to a certain degree is commoditized, and turn that into valuable inventory that is hitting particular audiences. And the shift from per site buying to audience buying has been very, very important over the last 12 to 18 months, I would say. I think there'll be a leveling out. I think that there will be a shift back to putting the importance back onto premium publishers like The Guardian, for example, The Times. So that commoditization will continue in a certain area, but there are still enough quality publications out there that will warrant advertisers wanting to be associated with those publications. And so it's not going to be a shift totally towards programmatic, but I don't think it's going to necessarily be staying the same as it was. We need to move forward. I think as an industry, there are many companies who want to move forward. It's very, very important. The question is why. The reasons that we would give is it's very time consuming and there's a lot of wastage. If you're going through the process of taking a brief from your client, if you're an agency, taking a brief from your client, going to a number of publications, going to a number of networks to then fill this requirement based on audience, based on demographics, based on spend, gather all that information together, write out an insertion order and then fax that back. It takes a lot of time. The process for doing that is quite long. If you then start looking to buy across territories, it becomes even more difficult. I spoke to one client that we're working with who said, if I need to buy inventory in Norway, I first of all have to try and find out who has inventory in Norway. I then have to try and find out their name and contact details, give them a call, negotiate a price. A couple of days later they come back, and then I can put my campaign live. It takes 3 to 5 days. We don't have that problem in the systems that we're using now. When we're aggregating content together on a real-time bidded basis, and we're using exchange technology to put that in front of the buyers, predominantly the trading desks and the agencies, then it's quite simple. They can go into the system, they can say, I'm looking for 18 to 34-year-old females who are interested in cycling, and immediately, within 2 seconds, we will look at the database, we look at the system, we'll be able to come back and tell you how many people you will reach, we'll tell you how many impressions are available, and most importantly, we'll tell you how much you'll need to spend on a CPM basis. And this is something that is core to the change in the industry that we're going through. It's no longer sit down, have lunch, a couple of martinis, and agree a price based on who your best friend is, or based on what happened last time and get it for 10% lower. It's a bit more scientific than that now. We can see who's been demanding inventory in a particular region for a particular demographic. There will be a certain amount of competition for that inventory, and based on that competition, that will set the price. So the publishers, and if we're working with sales houses in some cases, will be setting floor prices, saying, I'm not prepared to accept anything lower than this price. And that will traditionally be slightly lower than they would sell directly on an IO basis. The reason being, if you've set it too high, you're not going to win the bids and you're not going to fill your inventory. If you set it too low, you risk people trying to buy around you. So getting that floor price number correct is very, very important. But it means that they have control. Sometimes publishers don't have control if they're giving them inventory to somebody saying optimize and get the best that you can, whereas real-time bidding allows them to have that control. On the other side, the trading desks and the agencies are saying, we know how much we can pay, and they will set their maximum bid price. And so the price is totally dependent on what publishers have set, what floor prices, and how much inventory they've put in, and then the competition for that inventory as it's set by the trading desks and the agencies to say, we are looking for this audience or this particular site. So to give you an example, last Christmas, there was traditionally a huge demand for media, particularly online. and with video as well, that we saw a big uplift in December. Because there was an uplift in demand, we saw prices increase by up to 30%. Now, that's something that is very difficult to do on an I/O basis. If you have a rate for a particular site, if you have a rate with a particular sales house, that rate tends to be fixed, and every time a new negotiation comes around, it tends to be lowered, and certainly this is what we've seen the last number of years. When you set price based on supply and demand, the competition decides the price, and so the price was able to go up because more people were looking for it. Their bid prices were higher, and so they knew that if they wanted to fill their campaigns, get access to the inventory that they needed, they had to bid a little bit more. And dare I say that agencies, I don't think, are too concerned about this. When there's more availability, the price will be lower. When there's less availability, the price will be higher. And so the importance of focusing on get the price down every time you do a pitch, or every time you're trying to win a client, or every time you're trying to do a new campaign, isn't as important. We can focus more on the value. We are getting you the best price in real time. We're getting the best price at that moment. We're getting you the exact audience that you want at that moment. Or we're retargeting people who are already customers at that moment. And so this allows a lot more sophistication to come into the market. You might have a different strategy in the morning than you have in the afternoon, than you have in the evening, than you have overnight. And again, that's not possible to do in an I/O. If you book 10 million impressions, those 10 million impressions need to be delivered. If you're running through real-time bidding, that's not the case. If something isn't working or an area isn't working, you turn it off. We have 4-minute turnaround on reports. So if you see it's not coming back, you can change every 4 minutes. Now, obviously, that would drive all the planners crazy to do it, but it just shows that the bidding is happening in real time, and the results, you don't have to wait 2, 3, 4 weeks. The results come back to you almost immediately. And putting all these things together, so someone once said, I think it makes sense that media is turning from an art into a science. So whereas 10, 20 years ago, media houses and creative agencies were filled with very, very creative people, and they still are. It's very, very important to get that big idea, to get that message across. And we've seen that with some ads that have gone out recently. So that creative side doesn't change, but the application is becoming a lot more scientific, particularly within the media buying agencies. Can you get me to my audience? How much of my audience are you hitting, and how much of it is wastage? Has always been the mantra for media buying. 50% of my ad budget is wasted, I don't know which 50%. That's not as much the case anymore. If you're advertising on Carnation Street to 10 million people, 2 million people might be interested in your product, and that might be good enough for you to be able to hit that many people with that one ad. As we see the development and the rise of connected TVs, people watching Carnation Street in each household will get a different ad based on their demographics. And that will make advertising a lot more effective, a lot more efficient for advertisers, and help them to build their brands, which is, I guess, the promise of video-based advertising.